Hello, this is Skylit Lake reading Super Science by That Chicken Dude. Chapter 13, A New Discovery. Professor Egon sat at his desk with Professor Orpington sitting across from him as he showed off her newest invention, a proud look on her beak, a rocket launcher of sorts. Looked like it came straight out of a cartoon with bright colors and funny chicken stickers. He looked between the hyper-intelligent burn and the weapon before taking off thick glasses to rub his eyes. Okay, so run this by me again. You made what? Egon asked after putting his glasses back on his face. An air cannon, the doctor told him, with a new, smaller translator that was wrapped around her massive brain. Why? Egon prompted. For shooting eggs, of course, the doctor explained. What purpose does this serve? No purpose. Just fun. Work can't be work all the time, Dr. Orpington told him with a chipper cluck. Okay, but making this doesn't bother you? Egon asked, more cautious and worried tone. Not really, she admitted. You, a chicken making a cannon that shoots eggs? Egon asked while motioning to the device with all his fingers. Egon shook his head, seeing that she wasn't getting what he was implying. So, taking a more forward approach, he states, okay, so, this is the equivalent of me making a baby cannon. Well, that wouldn't be efficient at all, the doctor said back, making Egon raise an eyebrow, until she followed up saying nonchalantly, Besides, you'd have to wait 9 months to reload. Doctor! Egon half yelled in disgust and shock. You're using your unfertilized children as ammunition and blasting them at terminal velocity. Doesn't that bother you? He asked her bluntly. She shook her head and replied, No more than you eating my cooked children does. Egon stopped as he was halfway into his breakfast egg sandwich. Placing it down, he said, Sometimes I forget chickens are psychopaths. Homicidal, cannibalistic omnivores. The doctor said nothing to him in reply, and simply staring. Fine, I'll allow it, but no fertilized ones. Got it? Understood, she agreed while hopping on a strange device. Just before leaving, she nearly bumped into Izuku as he walked in and cordially greeted, Dr. Izuku. Dr. Orpington? Izuku greeted her back before the two went on their ways. Standing in the doorway and knocking on the frame, Izuku asked, Professor, are you busy? No, come in, Izuku, motioning to a seat. Once he sat down, Egon laced his fingers and asked, So, what horrors have you birthed today? Izuku was shocked by the allegations and tried to argue, I didn't. Only for Egon to chuckle. I'm just missing for you. But before you tell me what it is, I have some questions. Izuku sat quietly as Egon took a breath and listed off, Is it dangerous, alive, sentient, or potentially world-ending? No, Izuku answered back. Did you do anything dirty, underhanded, illegal, or behind my back? Egon gave him a look. No, Izuku exclaimed back, a bit of irritation and hurt. Egon sat back and smiled and told him, All of my concerns have been satisfied. What did you make or do? And don't leave anything. He stopped himself after remembering what he was told last time he asked that, so he backtracked and told him, On second thought, just give me the main points. Izuku nods before taking out his notebook and exclaiming excitedly, Okay, So I was doing some tests on the empty splinters and I made a huge discovery. Hearing his excitement and seeing his smile, Egon wanted to jump, but opted to simply ask back in equal excitement, "What is it, baby? What?" "So, you know how you have all those cell samples from every part of your body?" Izuku started. Only for Professor Cephalopod, who was walking by with his new translator on his head and a cup of coffee to overhear the conversation, stop in his tracks, peek his head in, and ask in confusion and concern, "Samples of what now? From where?" Egon shrugged at him and replied, "Why bother spending money on muscles, skin, and brain stem cells when you can get them from a self-made source?" "I was wondering why you were covered in so many injuries and scars," the professor commented back suspiciously while narrowing his eyes and taking a sip. Izuku then interjected in the conversation and continued, "Anyhow, I put them all into a vial with a splinter and you'll never believe what happened." Egon sat there waiting for an answer and finally exclaimed, "Well, don't leave us in suspense. Tell me." "It made a copy of your quirk," Izuku finally admitted, only for Egon to fall right out of his chair. "Oh my god, Professor Egon went into cardiac arrest again!" Izuku yelled in fear. "Again?" yelled Dr. Orpington from down the hall. "I'll get a defibrillator," Professor Cephalopod offered while rolling his eyes. "I'm okay, I just fell off my seat." Egon shot up an arm from behind his desk to calm their worries. Once he stood back up again and breathed, he stated in disbelief, "I don't even know what to say. Are you sure?" Izuku produced a cryptocrystal, and from his opposite hand, Izuku produced the same kind of crystal that Egon makes to create splinters. In shock, Egon says nothing except stare until he finally babbles out, "Wait a second, that's my quirk." He then looks at the splinter and asks Izuku, "Is this from—" Izuku nodded before he could finish, and Egon went to sit back in his chair. He pushed back his hair and asked, after absorbing all that in, "What was different from the blood and medicine splinters? I even used some of my blood for the AB plus splinter, and it didn't show any signs of my quirk. DNA, pure DNA, right here," Izuku told him with an excited smile, as he pulled out a vial that had a mixed red and blue color in it. It took a few minutes to digest what he just told him, as he took the vial and looked it over like a child looking through a kaleidoscope. After a bit, the thought finally dawned on him, and he observed aloud once more, "This is a vial filled with my genetic code." Egon jumped from his feet, grabbed Izuku in a hug, and spun him around while stating, "Izuku, this is incredible. You just made and discovered the two greatest things in probable history." Izuku couldn't help but feel happy for this, and had to resist the urge to cry out in joy, but suddenly Egon stopped his reverie and asked him, while still holding him, "But if you use the DNA samples I collected from a whole body to make the one you have, why do you have this?" he asked, while motioning to the vial. Izuku then explained to him, "Well, after I made the splinter with your quirk, I thought, I wonder what happens if you make one with pure DNA that doesn't take the form of anything else in the body. After I figured out how to extract all the DNA, I put it into another splinter. And how about I just show you?" he offered while bringing the professor to a small room in the facility. The room itself wasn't anything special. There was almost nothing in it apart from a small table that had a large and ever-growing crystal on it. Every so often, when it got too big, a set of robotic arms came down from the ceiling and broke off a huge piece that sucked it into a single corner of the room. In this corner, a machine would take every single shard and cut, shape, and polish it before sending it out down a short conveyor belt and into a box with many others. After looking over the machines and the box full of crystals ready to be made into empty splinters, he made his way to the ever-growing crystal. Inside the very center was a splinter that looked exactly like one Izuku used to demonstrate. Looking at the boy, the man could only say in a low, flabbergasted voice, "Whoa!" It's even more potent than this one since the strain was pure. But why make this one? Egon prompted him. Izuku looked down while shuffling his feet. You already do so much for the facility on top of making every splinter we have. I just thought it would be good to give you a break in at least one regard. And besides, what if you get sick or hurt, and when you die, this place will probably have to shut down? Egon smiles softly at him. Ruffling his hair, he tells him, Thanks for that, Izuku. You are a good kid with a good heart. Just have to make that head a little less fuzzy, he says while playfully pinching at his nose. Before they could continue with the comfortable silence, a shrill voice squealed, Dr. Izuku! Both men rushed outside the main foyer where they saw three things. Professor Cephalopod leaned on a wall and watched something in amusement as he drank his coffee. Dr. Orpington's cart was knocked over, and the doctor was being chased around the room by the baby mammoth, now called Gammoth, in a one-sided game of chase. Call off your beast at once! The doctor squealed in urgency as he tried to and failed to flap away. He's just playing with you, Professor Cephalopod called back teasingly. I'm an adult weighing in at 13 pounds with hollow bones and a nearly exposed brain. He's a few moments old and already weighs in at 200 pounds. He'll kill me, she crowed at him as Izuku ran up and grabbed Gammoth before he could catch her like a child attempting to catch a pigeon at the park. Once safely secured, the doctor ruffled her feathers and demanded, Keep that thing on a leash. Otto just bubbled out a laugh and walked off to his office as Egon helped to flip her moving device back up and get out of the foyer while Izuku still had the baby. Once gone, Izuku let go of Gammoth, where he stood by his side. Izuku, Egon said the boy's name as he walked up to him and said before stopping again, With this discovery you've made, are you thinking what I'm thinking? I'll make up flyers and posts on social media. I'll also separate a small portion of the facility's money as an incentive for volunteers, Professor Cephalopod said from a bit down the hallway, waving a tentacle inside the foyer. Thank you, Professor, Egon called back before facing Izuku excitedly. Now we have a whole new avenue to discover. Chapter 14 Experimental Log. Subject Quark Splinter. This is Dr. Izuku Midoriya reporting once again with a new round of experiments with the Singularity Soul, and more specifically, their splinters. I'll spare the details since I made a different report directly to Professor Egon, but in short, I was able to extract pure DNA and place it into an empty splinter, thus allowing me to copy a quirk. So far, I've only made a copy of Professor Egon's quirk as a method of producing more splinters. I've also found out that much like blood and medical splinters, when activated with a mental cue, I can produce the quirk as if it were my very own. I put a quirk in a bottle in a manner of speech, though this brings up a new thought. Wouldn't putting a pure extract of a person just make a splinter into that said person, just in crystal form? Then why does a person's quirk become the main factor in the splinter? The only theory I could come up with was that the quirk was something entirely different from the rest of the body, something that lies beyond the DNA, and I believe that something is the soul. Our quirks are internally meshed with our souls, or at least fragments of them. So, in essence, I'm either taking a piece or copying a person's soul with this, though, as you can imagine, That theory has many holes, especially since the singularity cell can cause quarks to emerge, so more tests will have to be done in that regard. Anyhow, after finding and telling this discovery, Professor Egon, with the help of Professor Cephalopod, was able to do a bit of marketing to get volunteers for this experiment. Luckily, the process was easy, and all the volunteers had to do was give their name, age, quirk, and description of it. Surprisingly, we got over several dozen volunteers. Of course, a lot of that came from the 1,000 yen volunteer award. Either way, we have tons of blood samples to work with. The only problem is extracting enough DNA to make a pure quirk splinter. I know what and how to do it, but I don't have it down to a complete science just yet. I'll report back with more results. This is Dr. Midori Izuku reporting once again on the quirk splinter creation process. After 2 painstaking weeks of grinding, I have finally extracted all DNA from each blood sample to infuse in the empty splinter, and in that time I think I have a process down to a science. Now I've just got to make a machine to do it for me. Forgetting about my gripes, during one of my sleepless nights I made an accidental discovery. When placing DNA into one of the vials I was using for the absorption process, I accidentally placed 2 different DNA samples into the same one. 5 days later, and out came a splinter with a perfect combination of both quirks, making it an entirely new one. After looking through my records, I found that both DNA samples I used were from 2 twins with different quirks. After finding this out, I did some more tests, and this is what I discovered. Quirks are just as much as part of our DNA as skin, and as such can be used to mix and match with different or stronger ones. For example, DNA from direct relatives such as twins, siblings, and first cousins can be mixed easily. Samples from parents and children can be mixed but with far less efficiency, or just simply strengthen the original quirk. Samples made from strangers or 2 people of the same gender have a 0% chance of mixing, except for when the quirks in question are very similar. For example, if one person has a quirk that can produce kerosene gel and another has a quirk that can ignite anything flammable, then the result would be a flame body quirk. As for 2 different quirks making a completely different quirk, like in the case of the twins, one twin can sprout a pair of wings, and the other can control the wind. Thus, the result is the ability to make wings of air and control it. As for a quirk being mixed between mother and child, imagine the mother having a quirk that produces chemical compound glycerin, and the child can produce explosions. The result would be the explosion quirk becoming even more powerful than it might be already. From this process, I was, and am, able to make hundreds of new splinters. My only other question is if I can triple the combinations, or even take 4, make 2, and combine those. This will require some more testing. So, for now, Dr. Izuku Midoriya, signing off. Hey guys, I hope you enjoy this video. Assignment week's coming up, so I might not upload that frequently. That's pretty much it. Hope you have a good day. See ya. Bye.